So The Boy and the Heron is the latest film from Hayao Miyazaki. And it's another one of his, it's another one of his return films. Like it always felt like, Miyazaki's, like this is going to be the last film I do. Like he said that with Princess Mononoke, and then he saw the current landscape of anime and said, I gotta do something more. So he hopped back in and did Spirited Away. So he stuck around at Studio Ghibli for a while, and then eventually he did The Wind Rises, which is all about, feeling like your creative control is coming to an end. So it felt fitting, 10 years ago that, him saying, oh, this is the last film. Okay, I'm done. This is it. And then, of course, nobody believed him, and he returned again, and he did The Boy and the Heron. And again, much like The Wind Rises, The Boy and the Heron is very much a fitting film if this is to be the end of Miyazaki's legacy. It's debatable whether it will be or not, but I mean, he's getting up there in years, and again, if he has to end on a film for his career, I think it helps that it's a film that it feels like he should end on a film that feels personal, that it's not just, like just simple wholesomeness, but that it's something that's coming from his heart and that he has like something left to say in this world and say it beautifully through his animation. And he actually really does with The Boy and the Heron. The film is set in 1943 Japan, and it follows a young kid called Mahito. So this kid, Mahito, has endured the loss of his mother through a fire and has ventured off with his father, with his new wife, in a new setting at a new estate, and Mahito's not having it. And it's not so much that he's throwing a fit, it's just kind of like, he's feeling very quiet and distant from everything that's going on because so much is happening. Like he's got to get used to his new mother, Natsuko, who's currently pregnant with another child. So Mahito's already feeling the pressure of like, getting used to a new mom and getting used to a sibling. And his dad's away the whole time and he's got to get used to a new school. So lots of pressure on this kid. That, it's just, it's a tough time for him. And you feel for him in this kind of like quiet, somber way. But then he notices that something weird is going on at the estate. Like off in the distance, there is a tower. And the people who reside on the estate, they try not to talk about the tower that much. They bring up that, it was built by Mahito's granduncle. And that for some reason he disappeared, and that the tower was blocked off for many years. So of course, Mahito's a little bit curious about what's going on in that tower and wants to explore it a little bit more. And further pushing him to explore that is this talking heron. Or apparently it's a magical heron that it can apparently transform into a bit of a human being. It's weird. Like it's a heron that like, the human form comes up out of the mouth like some bizarre kind of half transformer type deal. And it's just like this very like grumpy heron who entices Mahito by saying like, look, if you follow me, I can bring you back to your mom. Like, do you want to see your dead mom again? Because I know you've been having some dreams about her, and you might want to see her again for a little bit of closure. And so Mahito kind of, more or less kind of like follows into the tower, and the further that he gets inside the tower, he discovers this magical world of all these like mystical creatures, like other giant birds. There's these cute little pillowy type critters that are essentially souls going off to be born. There's differently aged people of familiar faces from Mahito's life, and there's also a kingdom of giant parakeets who want to eat human beings. So you do have kind of like this kind of a little bit of like Alice in Wonderland vibe going here, which I do appreciate that Miyazaki gives us a lot of time to get lost in this fantasy world, while it still carries this heavy thematic element about growing up and learning like to accept, like grief, but also like a passing of time as well. Because like it's not in the same league as like something like Spirited Away, which is very much about, learning to grow up when you can't depend on parents. This film is more or less about kind of learning to accept the next generation and moving on when you've lost something. And that comes in both the form of Mahito losing his mother, but also with the granduncle, who of course they do find within the tower at one point, and they do question about why he built this particular place. But also like realizing that, this tower is not going to be here forever, and that the legacy that you might have built up, it's, like you can leave it off to someone else, but they might not be ready to handle it, and that legacy could tumble down. And it's kind of one of those, it's like that gamble of life where you almost don't have much of a choice in who is going to be the next person to carry on for you. They might not carry on for you. They might just, grow up to do something else with their lives and not just, do the same thing, as what was done before. And there's something that's both sad, but like very profound, and very comforting about realizing that, because when you see that, when you get like up to that final scene when Mahito's confronting the granduncle, you can very much sense like there's an aspect that, like, that's Miyazaki on the screen right there. That's Miyazaki watching him, pass off Ghibli, and animation itself. So like the future of animators, and more or less not feeling like, like they'll be able to handle it. But if they don't, it's one of those, it's a matter of acceptance. It's like, some people might be able to carry on your legacy and keep something going that you've established and built for this long, for like, that's something that stood for the longest time and that you've put all your passion into, but they might not be there for all of it. And, it's that sad truth about, when you get old, you might have built up a legacy for yourself. But after you pass on, there's only so much that you can leave and only so much that will last. Like if you built up a building and that's your legacy, that building, could be demolished by someone who buys the land. It could be obliterated by weather. It could just decay over time. And it's one of those things of accepting that you won't be here forever, and the stuff you leave behind may not be around forever either. And it's one of those things that like Mahito kind of learns, to accept this and grow as a kid, but also like, the older adults who, have to learn to let go and, like realize that, it's up to the next generation to write their own chapter. So very profound themes, but also just beautiful animation, like cute stuff here and there. Like the cute little soul critters are fun, and the parakeets are hilarious just for how big they are and how they lumber around and how they want to eat humans. And there's this silly parakeet king here, voiced by Dave Bautista. The other thing I should have mentioned too is like the English dub for the film does feature some familiar names you might recognize, like you have Gemma-chan in there, you have you have Christian Bale playing Mahito's father. One of the most peculiar things I found about the film, though, is that when I was looking at what actors were going to be for the English dub, I saw Willem Dafoe on there, and I thought, okay, Dafoe is going to be the Heron, because I looked at the Heron. It's like this big nosed grumpy guy who doesn't want to be around this kid, so I figure he's gonna have a haggard voice, and he kind of does have that kind of grisly voice in the film, but that's not Willem Dafoe. The Heron is actually voiced by Robert Pattinson, and I found myself so fascinated. I found myself with like the same fascination when Illumination will choose like celebrity voices that you wouldn't expect to do a particular type of voice. Like I did not expect Robert Pattinson to be voicing the Gray Heron in this film. Willem Dafoe actually does voice one of the other birds very fittingly, but just having Pattinson in that role, it's almost unrecognizable. Like I had to like listen closely because is that Pattinson? And it's like, no, that is kind of him. After I listened to it very closely after a while, so very impressive voice work there. So yeah, I mean, I think what a lot of people do need to realize about this film is that it's a little bit more abstract than the other Ghibli films. Like it's not as firmly on the track as like Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke in terms of, like the story that you can follow and the bigger themes that it's encompassing. The Boy and the Heron is very much a film where the themes overtake much of the story, that most of the plot just kind of gets lost in this fantasy world while, Mahito goes on more of this, this internal journey. And I think for some people that's going to be a little bit frustrating, especially for the fact that the film kind of has a little bit of a slow first act with establishing, Mahito's background and his current position in life. But honestly, the payoff here at the end is just so beautiful and sad, but like at the same time very, very uplifting, that it's very fitting if this is to be Miyazaki's final film. So it's another wonderful film from Hayao Miyazaki, and whether he retires or not, this is another fantastic film, and it'd be a great one to be his, and it'd be a great final film for his career. Very, very fitting.